Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. In this podcast, we'll dive into the strategies that top leaders, investors, and entrepreneurs are using to navigate and thrive in this era of accelerating technological change. Whether you're looking to lead more effectively, make smarter investments, or understand how to harness disruptive technologies for exponential growth, this podcast is for you. Each episode will feature conversations with visionary thinkers, industry pioneers, and innovative leaders who are redefining what's possible in today's rapidly evolving world. So if you're ready to start and stay ahead of this curve, let's get started. This is Exponential Growth. All right, everyone. Well, hey, welcome to another episode of the Exponential Growth Podcast. Today, we have with us Laura Moreno-Lucas. She's the general partner of Latitude Ventures and the managing partner of the Libra Fund. She serves on many boards. We were talking earlier, we don't know how many people serve on all these different boards, whether it's nonprofit, startup boards, public boards. And then she's also an author of the book Libra Leaders. Her background, and we'll kind of dig in more on this when we understand a little bit about her background. She's got a BS in criminal law from Cal State Sacramento. So you can imagine when we talk about her journey from a BS in criminal law to a leading venture capitalist across multiple funds. Welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, Laura Moreno-Lucas.
Thank you, David, for having me. I'm very excited to chat with you today and share more about my criminal law background.
Well, I'm sure there's ties. I'm sure there's ties in there. We had you out at our summit a month or so back in beautiful SF, and I knew a little bit about your background, and I got to understand a little bit more about your background and was amazed. But we always start out the podcast with our guests and just tell everybody a little bit about your journey and your story. You have a phenomenal one. I know decent parts of it, and I think those who are listening, you're in for a treat. Laura's got an amazing life journey. So, Laura, your story.
Oh, thank you. It's definitely not a linear path. Like most, immigrants who come to the U.S., we have a very interesting path. So I'm originally from Guadalajara, Mexico. So I'm very proud to be Latina and go Mexico because we're
aren't they? Well, that's where the games are going to. It's Guadalajara where the games are going to be.
Guadalajara. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there was games in Mexico City and also
that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
They're doing great. So we're very excited. We're very proud. So we'll see how they continue in the progress. But I'm definitely representing all of the soccer league for Mexico. And then I do come from a family of athletes. My uncle was one of the big stars from Las Chivas, and Las Chivas is a big soccer league in Guadalajara. So anyways, long story short, always really driven because of a family. And if there's one thing my dad taught me, which he passed away earlier this year, was that I have to just work hard, heads down, work hard. And I truly took that to heart. So throughout my journey, I really never kind of looked up and looked around. I, graduated, didn't know any English when I came to the U.S., of course. I got taught English by a janitor at my elementary school. So there's a story behind that. But
I'll have a quick follow-on story on that one too, but go ahead.
Yeah. And so, after graduating, of course, didn't end up in what I studied. I wanted to be an FBI agent and went to actually take the exam. And when I went through the process, they said, hey, go back, get some real world experience, and then come back to us because they were looking for accountants, lawyers, former military, what have you. So yeah, I actually wanted to go to Quantico and train and be an agent. So landed in a very different spot. I got an opportunity in San Diego at a broker dealer in the financial with a financial firm and was entry clerk where I was just actually doing data entry on new accounts. But that really changed my life because it showed me that there is incredible amount of money that's being transferred into the banking systems and Wall Street that I knew nothing about. So I was determined to understand the capital markets, and that led me on a journey from not only working there in operations, compliance, commissions, um, even some stuff on the trading floor. And that really unlocked a lot for me that led me on my journey in the capital markets. So I worked for a company called First Allied Securities, then moved to SunGard, then moved to TD Ameritrade. So that is how I entered into Wall Street. After that, I left Wall Street because there was one thing that was very resonant with me for many years in Wall Street and was the only woman showing up with massive suitcases and like 5 to 10 pairs of shoes to go to meetings that I had to change from day to night. So my fashion sense was always there. So I left my 9 to 5, started a fashion company called La Da Da, which I later sold to Stitch Fix. And as we know, Stitch Fix became a publicly traded company. So that was my entrepreneur journey that really unlocked a lot for me in understanding how startups start, grow, raise, and exit. And then from there, I went into working in tech a little bit with Salesforce and then got recruited over to Nasdaq, where I was the managing director of new listings and capital markets. Took some of the largest company publics, which included Lyft, Airbnb, the RealReal, Beyond Meat, One Medical. So then saw a later stage of capital. And so that gave me a really great perspective on the full life cycle of starting to an exit, which very few people know, like actually experience that. And then, again, my dad, as he always said, hey, work hard, work hard. At that point, I kind of looked around me and I was like, huh, there's not a lot of women or Latinas or, a lot of diversity here. So I'm going to go check out what I can do to bring more people around the table and try to open up the floodgates here. So I started doing syndicates. In one of those syndicates that I was running, I met Sol and Gary and Kenny Blanco, and that's what led me into joining them at Latitude Ventures, where we raised $100 million, and we've now invested in 45 companies and deployed 65 million. And
And just back up because maybe some of the people who are listening, Soul, Gary, like we know who they are, but maybe people don't know who you were able to kind of partner with. Maybe just a quick, one sentence on each of them, just for the listeners.
Yeah, of course. So Sol Trujillo is one of the first Latinos, Fortune 200, that led large companies here in the United States, U.S. West, out of Colorado, and later left to run Telstra out of Australia and competed directly against Rupert Murdoch. After he left Telstra, he came back into the U.S. and was kind of looking at the landscape and seeing that, there was a lot of opportunity here for Latinos, and yet he hadn't seen the landscape change very much. So he took it upon himself to really build an ecosystem and a network called Latitude that he joined Gary Acosta with, and Gary Acosta runs NAREP, which is one of the largest organizations in the U.S. for Latinos in housing and new home ownership. And so they joined forces and started a conference called Latitude, where they were basically bringing big themes around business, housing, corporate America to really educate the U.S., showing them that Latinos, immigrants, and the broader ecosystem are actually generating so much in GDP for the US. And there was one area that they kept seeing that was there was so much innovation coming from is entrepreneurship, but there wasn't really a lot of capital being driven there. And so they took it upon themselves to actually start a fund. Or the first fund was a smaller fund just to test it out, invested in about 5 companies that did outstanding. And so that kind of set the stage for the institutional fund, which is Latitude Ventures Fund 2. And then when they looked to see who they would join forces with, they brought on Kenny, who was Blanco, who was from BlackRock, and then they brought me on to help on the venture side since I had already experienced that as a founder and then, obviously being in the capital markets for many years. So I was excited to join them on that journey. And it's been incredible to help so many founders, incredible to see them grow. And even the ones that haven't worked out, it is an important opportunity for them to understand how to build. And then, it doesn't always work out. So then you try and build something else. So yeah, it's that's been my journey.
And then that takes us to then also uh, the Libra fund,
Yes.
yeah, Libra Ventures, right? So,
Yeah, the
so tell
Libra
us a little bit
Fund.
about that.
Yeah, so one of the things that was very interesting to see was um, in my in the last 5 years of being a general partner, again, looked around and I was like, where are all the women who are investing or where are all the Latinas who are investing? Because I started to get an influx of deal flow from women, all, and, sharing their innovation, sharing their ideas with me and wanting to seek capital. And of course, I'm somebody who always loves to support innovation. And if I have any knowledge that I can share with somebody, I take it upon myself to meet with people and share that knowledge. And as I'm meeting these women, I'm just like, wow, she's incredible, incredible scientist, incredible engineer, incredible talent. And of course, I couldn't fund them all. So I
Right. You
started
don't
to
have unlimited, you looking fun all
I
these
have
stories. You don't have
limited
unlimited
capital.
money.
I mean, I want to fund them all, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I started connecting the dots to other investors, including the Angeles Network, and saying, hey, we have some incredible founders. Could you take a look? And it became this very interesting network of women, VCs that no one knew about. And I'm like, wait, how do you not know, Samara, how do you not know Laura Maydon? How do you not know Nora Mai, Rachel Tenbrink, many of these incredible women investors. And I was like, okay, I know them but it's because we're such a small, tight-knit group and we don't share a lot about what we're doing and we're building. And there's so few of us. There's about 80 partners. And this again is partner level. There's more in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it's expanding, but we're talking partner level investors. And so that's when I said, okay, I need to shine a light on these investors. I need to create a platform where women know where to go and how to and seek these women that actually have capital to deploy. So that set the precedence for Latinas in VC, which is the book that I launched. And it showcases all of the women in here, their story and how they got to where they are and the capital that they are deploying. Like Diana Navarez, who's incredible. She's actually out of Brazil, but she is an incredible investor for Flourish, and which is also based here in the U.S. And so we just started to share that with people so that this was like a guide for not only founders but for investors to know that these women have the ability to invest. And so that network took off. And over the last year, it was really apparent that we needed a more formal fund for this because we continue to get incredible women founders that are innovating. And then there's another component that has changed over the last couple years. There are more women now in decision-making roles in enterprises than before that have the ability to support that innovation in enterprises and really adopt that through different sectors, whether it's healthcare, whether it's, financial services, whether it's in workforce solution. And so now that we're seeing that there's more women in these decision-making roles, they have the ability to really help anchor and bring that innovation in. Not that the men weren't doing it, but sometimes you have these instincts that kind of go in certain directions. And again, with healthcare, there's so much innovation happening now
Oh,
that
it's
are bringing
incredible.
opportunity to unlock some real cool technology for women that some of these key women leaders know about and understand, and it's really bringing that into the fold. So that is something that I'm really excited about. And again, the opportunity's there, and we're driving that opportunity. So yeah.
And then in just home, where at the San Francisco area, where's home?
Yeah, I live in San Francisco, and I'm here most of the time. I think most of my travels will lead me to either New York and some in LATAM, but there's a lot going on right now in the Bay Area. It's been interesting to be here, sort of through this transition of post-COVID, because a lot of people left San Francisco during COVID, and it really became a ghost town, but it's coming back because AI has brought that back really full force, and it's really incredible to see the city thriving again and just so many founders and so much innovation. I mean, Sand Hill was always here, right? Silicon Valley, and we see more innovation than most of the world. So I really don't have to go far to really find a lot of opportunity because I'm right in the hub.
Yeah, well, what a cool journey. See to the listeners out there. See, I told you it'd be a cool when you think about it, starting out in stocks and criminal and FBI and finance and all these different turns and twists, to venture capital and your own fund and a book and wow, Laura, it's an amazing, amazing journey. And you're just warming up. You're just warming up. So a lot more great things to come. Okay, so you invested in a lot of startups. You've seen a lot of startups. You're in Silicon Valley, San Fran area. You were a startup founder. To our listeners out there, some are college students, some are on the board of directors, some are in LATAM, some are, all over the place. What are, say, two key exponential trends that they should have on their mind or keep, get smarter on?
Well, I really don't like to follow trends. I guess what I would say is the market is, there's cyclical things that happen, and then there's structural things that are important. And so I think always coming down to the fundamentals and structural foundation of, well, why, if you're building a business, why are you building it? Are you the right person to build it? Do you have the expertise to build in, whether it's, a fintech solution today and this market where you're competing against, really big infrastructure that has been there, but maybe you want to approach it differently in the technology that you're using. So the way I always think about, if I give advice to founders is really understand who your customer is. I was obsessed with my customer when I had a startup, and I knew everything about where she lived, where she shopped, what she wanted, where, her life, her even like salary opportunity, because I had to back into what that customer addressable market would be. and whether they would want it. And I did a lot to test that well ahead of building what I built. And I had a lot of research in the fashion market and fashion and tech market and why it was a different opportunity at the time. And so what I would say was structural about it was, I had a background in actually understanding fashion because I was designing my own clothes. I was, actually making a lot of these design, manufacturing them, building them. So I understood how to build the product, make the product. And then it was about how to deliver the product and understand how to meet the customer. And so knowing where all of that was and what I needed from not only myself, but who was going to join me along this ride. So having the right team, having the right understanding of, the how you're going to do it. All of these things are foundational. Now, when I had this business, it was right in 2009, and it was really at the forefront of when subscription was actually coming to market. So
Yeah.
before then,
SaaS or whatever, not
yeah,
or just subscriptions, just in subscriptions.
yeah, because before, like you would still do, ordering online was still not as big as it is today. Back then, it was like, oh, I'm going to order online and try it on at home, and do this and that. And now everything is ordered online, and you get everything delivered. But that back then it wasn't. So under that opportunity right there was, I saw that. I was like, wow, this is a shift. This is, something that's going to shift the way people shop. This is going to shift the way people consume fashion. And so I
Yeah.
saw that and did a lot to understand that. And that is what helped create that opportunity. So I think, when I think about people who are builders, I'd say, the biggest thing my advice would be is, really understand who you're serving, really understand how you're building, have the right team, and understand who your customer is and how you're going to attract them. All these things are so critical, but sometimes are really overlooked because you're so obsessed with the thing, the passion behind building the solution, right?
Yeah. And I think it's like what if I can summarize is like you need to on one there's kind of maybe two sides to it. One side you have to be customer obsessed, deeply understand your customer, what they need, what they want, where they're going, all that kind of stuff. The other thing that you had, and this is for those who are listening, right, is you also got to have a vision of what subscriptions in this case, of tech and how tech is enabling subscriptions and ordering online and all that kind of stuff, right? And then merge and then saying, oh, and then extrapolating, right? So know a technology, extrapolate what it's going to be, how it's going to impact, couple that with the deep understanding of your customer obsession, right? You look at Amazon, right? One of the largest companies in the world. That's like one of their key principles, right? Is deep customer obsession. So that's a good kind of
Yeah.
way to think about it.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, the first thing in terms of, building a company is how are you going to get revenue in the door and who, I would never even thought about, and this is the difference, a lot of entrepreneurs are like, oh, I'm going to go to venture or I'm going to go to venture. I never even thought about going to venture. I thought I need to build this and then see where it goes, and then maybe someone will be interested in my company. So I was obsessed with actually making money and getting growth through customers. Novel, right? Like, so my obsession was where is my customer? I knew my customer was not going to be in the suburbs. I knew my customer was going to be in an urban city, in a dense location, someone who was busy, someone who wanted
Mhm.
to, dress up for work, maybe also had a lifestyle that they would go out after work,
Yep.
the age range, everything. And so that profile was what led me to different markets and testing and different opportunities. But that is something that you have to spend a lot of time understanding and then test and see if it's working, adjust, pivot quickly, and then build. So we did a lot of that.
Yeah. And so moving to investing, right? So we're in times of, I mean, crazy things, right? SpaceX, talk about Nasdaq, IPO, SpaceX IPOs, largest one ever. Stock goes up. I think it crashed, not crashed, but it, came down, whatever. It's all relative. Just tons of, and so that's just one data point. But your investing career, right? You started, I'm saying at the bottom, but you started like opening up and managing transactions and just seeing what's going and all the money that's moving back and forth. You raised money, you took that money, you invested that money as a business owner. So, you've watched other people and their investments, you've taken money from investors and invested it as a business owner. Then you've got into all these, different organizations that drive financial markets, right? So you have that perspective. And then now you've been a general partner and a managing partner at venture funds. And so you're investing in startups, raising money, deploying money, uh, and looking to give your investors a great return. So to the listeners out there with that broad kind of experiences on investing, what and just your general thoughts on and your lessons learned life and what you would impart to this diverse audience just about investing in these times, right? This is the other thing about this podcast. This we're in times of a lot of change, a lot of technology change where you get multi-trillion, we used to be billion-dollar IPOs were a big deal. Now it's like trillion is the thing, right? So all enabled by technology. So just your general thoughts, Laura, just on investing for our listeners out there.
Yeah, I mean, over the last decade, catam cata, the capital markets have changed tremendously. And I'd say the biggest change that has happened has been the ability to understand companies in a different way because of the access we have to information and the speed. So when I was running deals at Nasdaq, I'll give you an example. We would start to work with companies years ahead of their IPO. Years. Why? Because there was so much that went into preparing the S1. I mean, like it was like preparing for a wedding. Like you had to not only set up for the party, but you had to have everything foundationally built from the investment bankers to investors relations to your law firms to your accountants, everything. And all of that, by the way, is extremely expensive. And then, having all that support and then having to file all of that, not only with, the regulators, but also with the exchange that you were going to list on, and then understanding how to share all this information with your board members, with your preparing your customers, preparing how you're going to engage with retail investors, with institutional investors, your roadshow. I mean, analyst. Like I can't even tell you like the analyst coverage roadshows that you have to do to understand how to speak to the analysts. I remember there was one company, they're like, oh, we're creating a new market. We're not going to go in and we're not going to get bucketed under a tech firm or a SaaS company. And sure enough, when they went on the roadshow with with the investors and the analysts, they're like, oh, you're a SaaS company because everybody thinks that they're going to get bucketed and valued differently. But, Wall Street has a way of doing things, and those buckets are set. And that is not changed. But what has changed is the speed and the information. So before, roadshows would take forever. Before, S1s would take longer. Before, IPOs, filings, and these things would take years. Now, I mean, since COVID, everybody does it. You can do a road show during, with video, you can actually file very quickly. There's condensed time frames. There's different ways to do things. So the optionality and how you do it has changed dramatically. And even like with SpaceX, having more retail come into it is a very different approach, right? And so
Yeah.
that also has changed how IPO structures are done, where, the lead banker is leading things and they're driving a lot of the retail engagement to bring more people in on the retail side. So I would say the biggest change is that it's a lot faster. There's a lot more information available and really helping people get educated in how to understand not only private markets, but public markets. And because of that, I think there's a bigger opportunity to participate. And that participation has really attracted a new unlock of investors, which is great because I think the biggest value that the US has is the capital markets. We are the strongest in the world, and I think that is to be celebrated. So when you see trillion-dollar IPOs, I mean, it's crazy, but it's also great because there's nowhere else in the world that that is happening. And we're building wealth here to actually reinvest, hopefully, in the US, in the innovation that's created, and now in space, apparently.
Yeah, the next frontier.
Yeah.
Um, and so when you now moving to leadership, again, your journey, right, put you in a lot of different leadership roles. You wrote a book covering many leaders. You invest in leaders. You worked with some of the top leaders in the world, right? In Seoul, Gary, and others, and just what they've done. What take that, and then just in the times that we're in with all this exponential change and things going on, what would be some leadership principles that you would just say two of your top leadership principles that stand the test of time, whether we're very simple environment or environment of let's say technology changes even more rapidly in the future? What would you say?
Oh my God. I definitely have to bring in Oscar Munoz into this conversation because
So who's that? So who's Oscar? I think not everybody knows. I know who
Oscar
Oscar.
Munoz, he is another general partner at Latitude, but he's the former CEO of United Airlines. And he led United for many years. He had a health situation that happened that changed the trajectory of him being at United. But he always has given me a lot of guidance on how to be a great leader. And the number one thing he always says is listen. And it sounds easy, but when you're in a room and number one, if you have a lot to say, because I sometimes have a lot to say. And number
Most
two,
smart people do. Most
and
smart
number
people do.
two, sometimes if you don't have a lot to say and you really want to absorb and take things in and not have an opinion about it or just kind of absorb, it's really important how you actually take in information and take time to process it and really understand what's being said and think through it. So I think some of the greatest things that I've learned from him is really listen and not respond right away and take time. And that has served me so well because I think what it does is as human beings, we need to process information and we need to actually think through what to say before we just react. Someone who does this really well, as I just saw him speak the other day, is Obama. If you see how he takes in information and then like actually delivers on that information, he doesn't like cut people off or like deliver it right away. You can see him processing it and then really have a cadence around how he's delivering his response and articulating what he's taking from what you said. And
Mhm.
it's incredible to see. So I think listening is something that needs to be adopted more. I struggle with it, and I try to do it, often to really listen to people. And I think that also um, helps you connect with people more because it really creates a stronger bond when you actually listen to people in all aspects of your life, regardless if it's business or relationships. So that's one, and I give Oscar credit for that. And the other one that I think is really important, especially now, is being someone who can share information and driving that towards the next generation of leaders. Um, when I think about what I'm building with the Libra Fund, I want this to be a platform for women, and I want all women to come into this. And whether it's, someone just recently who graduated or someone who's, mid-level in their career, I want everybody to participate, and I want to bring them in as, stars and have them speak and have them share their knowledge and wins, because I think that's really what it's about now. It's helping the next generation, thrive in this ever-changing world that we have, because it is changing, but helping them still feel connected through a platform and success, and having other people that are equal-minded. I think it is really important. So yeah, I think listening, and then just letting other people lead and be a part of a community that you can really support.
Yeah, those are great. On the listening side, in my book, it's part of just networking and there's networking excellence is like even when you're networking, right, you should listen more than you're speaking. And I said, God gave us two ears and one mouth. We should use it in that proportion, right? Or maybe even listen more. And then, the second point is just really creating that platform for the next generation of leaders. We're working to do that with Angeles. And actually being an author is another way to do that, right? And in yourself and what you've done. So kudos there. And then, I mentioned earlier I was going to tell us, well, maybe you can maybe double click one as we wrap up, right? Just my mom, all my family's from Puerto Rico. It came to the States. My mom didn't speak any English, and then my grandmother, I don't know, she barely spoke any English either. She sends my mom to grade school, and the teacher goes to my grandmother and says, Miss Flores, your daughter, she doesn't speak English. My grandmother said, no, that's why I'm sending her to school. So, when you mentioned the janitor story, I was like, I got everything, and I can only imagine and then my grandma, her English was probably really broken as well, to say that. But and your janitor ended up teaching you English then, huh?
Yeah, so my parents didn't speak English when they first came here, and then obviously they were always working. So when I was in elementary school, I started getting homework, and I had no idea what they were expecting of me. And I knew I would hear this janitor, speaking Spanish, and so I would ask him, "Hey, can you come ask my teacher what my homework is? Because I don't understand." And so he would go and ask her, "Hey, can you tell me what her homework was?" And then he took it one step further. Not only did he ask her, but then he sat with me after school and helped me through my homework. And that changed my life, because if, these are the moments where people take an interest in you and help you. And if he wouldn't have helped me, I don't know if I would have gotten through elementary school. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's my father he was a carpenter, but then for a brief period he did kind of janitor for like the utility. So yeah, I think I'm very confident with that life experience. Like you always have a special empathy for those who are either whether they're cleaning, I'm in a hotel, cleaning the hotel room, the janitor, whatever, right? There's certain I just call it love and respect, right, for those people. And you hear stories like that. It's amazing. And then, your life journey, Laura.
Yeah, of course. No, it's just hardworking people, right? So it's great.
Excellent. Well, Laura, I know you've got a ton of things going on. We're so honored that you take some time and share your life experiences, your life journey, some insights around trends, investing, leadership with our audience. How do people stay connected with you on social media and follow all the great stuff that you and your fund and funds are doing?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn at Laura E. Moreno, or you can follow me on the Libra Leaders LinkedIn page. We also have an Instagram page. And you can always email me if you want to reach out at laura@lucas.me.
Excellent. Well, hey, Laura, thanks again. Look forward to continuing to listen and hear you on the journey. And everybody, get out there and support her, follow her, like her, keep in touch with all the great stuff Laura has going on. Thank you again.
Thanks, David. It was so great to talk to you. Thank you for the opportunity.